Today we are in Poblenou again, and we are visiting the studio of 300,000. Is that right?
Yeah.
300,000 kilometers per second, which is a very long name there. Mar and Pablo, hello, how are you?
Hi.
I'm fine.
I would like you to introduce yourself. How would you describe yourselves and your work?
Finally, we are urban planners. Urban planners that we are in a context not digital, no? In a, how we can say in the School of Barcelona, it has a very good tradition, but it's not a super modern school, or at least not an experimental school. And we have done this path, no? Trying to explore new opportunities, no? And bring them in this field of knowledge, no? That it's urban planning.
Actually, all the story began like 5 years ago when we were making like new projects, and we find the necessity to explore new tools. And we start coding, we start learning how to use the computer better. We go through GIS systems, and at the same time, all the data ecosystem was exploding here in the city. So it's a time where open data was beginning, where like big data analysis also was at the very, very, very beginning. So I think we make this path together with the evolution of the technology. And for us, what was the most important thing is to find these intersections with the city, how we could use this potential that new technologies or like new data sources had for urban planning to rethink a little bit out of the box of this more traditional background where we came from.
How you work and what kind of tools you use to work?
Today we are working with super big databases, not databases related to urban planning, databases more related to big data and this kind of things, with a lot of machine learning, with a lot of artificial intelligence. So finally it's this kind of tools that we are merging, and we put all this over maps. So for us, the data visualization on the map is the key point, be able to explain all this complexity. We need to make transparent all the analysis, all the decisions that we take through data. And here the data visualization is a key point.
I would like to know what is the role of these three things, art, science, technology, in your work?
I think that we mix constantly, in the sense, at least according to our point of view, of urban planning depends on our capacity to understand what we have around us. And this capacity of describing, this capacity of seeing the surroundings is managed through the technology. So finally, it's the technology that helps us to see. This is very normal. So in all the different kind of arts, this happens, that we see through the technology. And finally, we understand that we need to make envisions, or we need to make a kind of documents. We say documents, of course, we are a urban planning agency, but we make pictures, or we make this something that we need to be able to communicate to help the other people to envision the city with us. So we need to, this act of communicate sometimes is more quiet, and sometimes is more speculative. And here is when we try to make desires, when we try to make empathies, when we try to make this description more appealing, and not only close to a fake subjectivity.
I would love to ask you about the Barcelona and Catalonia community that moves around these three points, the triangle, art, science, and technology. How is this community, this ecosystem here?
I think that in the field of the urban planning and architecture, that is the field that we are more close, we need a lot of things to do. Of course, we don't have the architecture as architecture and urban planning as a field of speculative research. We build buildings, we do streets. We don't think about buildings, we don't think about the streets if it's not inside this process of building. So we don't have these speculative processes that we need to rethink our environment. And in this case, having the platforms, having the resources to be able to meet the people, to work together, only to think in a speculative way how we need to do these things. Of course, architecture and urban planning, there is no discussion about I think about the relation that they have with technology and art and science. No, so we can say that it's a kind of discipline that it's more or less obvious, no, how close they are. No, what we don't have is this way of thinking that we need to work on it outside the process of building.
The Ars Electronica Barcelona garden revolves around two topics, two themes, and the first one of them is uncertainty.
This idea of uncertainty totally changed our mindset, and I think in a city like Barcelona, we were starting to rethink this urban model, but uncertainty is going to accelerate this. I think we are in a climate crisis that nobody now would deny, and we need to start to think from the way we are building our housing, the way we are moving, the way we are creating the spaces of work, the way we are relating.
I think that finally in urban planning, we work with futures, of course. Our work is not for 2 years after, our work is for 10, 20, 40, 100 years after. So when we work with urban planning, we think in futures. Thinking in futures is thinking of uncertainty, because it's very complex, and every time we work with scenarios, we work with hypotheses, we try to manage these hypotheses and imagine what could happen, if something, other thing happens, This is part of our work. And what we have learned these months is all the scenarios that there has been, that we have developed, the public administrations have been developed for the crisis. All the scenarios are wrong. And it means that, of course, we are in the maximum climax of the uncertainty. And this is important because also we are in the moment where we can make more and more proposals. So this moment of big uncertainty, where all the scenarios are wrong, is when we can work more flexible. We are more open, or people is more open to understand that we need to make new hypotheses, and we think new futures. So I think that now is the best moment for us to propose, and to think new hypotheses, of future thanks to this uncertainty.
The other topic that we need to reflect on is ecology.
Every time that we talk about urban planning and we say ecology, so the thing that we need to understand is that we have impacts. So urban planning usually has been developed as an individual strategy for small cities in small territories, for say as an isolated way. And more than ever, we need to understand that cities are connected, and what you do in a city has an impact around the world. So I think a good example is this project A, for the Catalan participation in the Biennale of Venice. Where we are thinking about how these impacts that we have of this climatic crisis, it's also inside the cities with a health crisis, by the pollution of the cars. So how these big phenomena are connected with the small phenomena, how urban planning can actuate over all these big scale problems. How, for example, for us, it's impossible to actuate against Repsol and the fuel companies. I don't imagine how, without a super big revolution, we are able to do this, but how we can remove cars inside the city and we can actuate against this phenomena. So this idea of ecology, as all is connected, all has an impact, and these impacts come back in another way. What you are doing now will come back in another way to you again. Is what we need to think in urban planning, not an isolated strategy for small territories, as a global territory, that we need to manage.
Thank you very much.